Hello my friends and welcome back to Chess with Konstantin. Today is a very exciting day because today we are starting a new chess series entitled Legendary Chess Masters. Now this first game that I want to show you is by a fellow named Rashid Nashmedinov. Now Nashmedinov is not really widely known as a player in Western circles. But for those who know who I'm talking about, he's really considered to be a chess wizard, an absolute magician of tactical combinations, and one of the greatest attacking and, more importantly, greatest sacrificial players of all time. When a lot of people think about chess, they think about spectacular piece sacrifices, when a person sacrifices a knight, bishop, rook, or even a queen to attack the opponent's king, and finally, despite all odds and despite all the material they sacrifice, they achieve a victory by checkmating the opponent. These kinds of very exciting games is what Nashmedinov is well known for. And the reason why he's not more popular than he is today really has to do with several things. So Nashmedinov lived in the Soviet Union during the starting from the 1920s to about the 1960s, where his really period of activity. And Nashmedinov was an ethnic minority. He was a Tatar, and the Tatars were suppressed in the Soviet Union. So he wasn't really allowed to leave the country much to go compete in international tournaments, but only two or three occasions that he was able to leave, he was able to become an international master. And but to give you an idea, the Soviet chess before Bobby Fischer, the world chess stage was dominated by Soviet masters. And Mr. Nashmedinov, Rashid G. Nashmedinov, actually won the Russian chess championship 5 times. So I think this is an equivalent in those times of being a world champion 5 times. More importantly, he actually has a winning record against multiple world champions. And for those of you who know Mikhail Tal, also a very, very well-known world chess champion, known for his attacking style. Nashmedinov was actually Tal's coach for some time, and he taught Mikhail Tal how to play exciting attacking chess. So now that we know what we are dealing with, let's take a look at this game. This is Sansonov Nashmedinov was played in Kazan in 1929. And at that time, Nashmedinov was just a club player. So this game, I don't believe he was a master yet. I think he was a category 1 player, so a strong player, maybe an expert, but he certainly did not have an official chess title at this time. But let's take a look at this game. Nashmedinov had the black pieces, and the game began pawn to e4. Nashmedinov responded with pawn to e5. And now we have knight to b3. This is called the Vienna game. And in this opening, white tries to open the f file by playing f4. And the idea is to really develop an attack on the king side, really an early attack on the f7 square. And white, if black is not careful, white can become very active in this position. So white, it tends to play f4 and f5, and eventually also g4 and g5 maybe, or capture, depending on what black does. And black has to be careful. But the normal response is knight to f6, which is what Nashmedinov, our hero, played in this position. And okay, knight f6 prepares the advanced d5. Now, obviously, knight to f6 is not the only move here. It's also possible to play moves like bishop to c5. This takes control of the center square d4, and organizes the the attack on this diagonal. But okay, Nashmadinov played pawn knight to f6, and now we have the move f4. This is a normal, very normal move in this system. Besides f4 here, it's possible certainly to play other moves. You can develop the bishop. One interesting variation involves bishop to c4 here. This is called the Frankenstein Dracula variation. And after capture here, if white takes, then you have pawn to d5 and capturing the piece back. So something like this is very possible. But of course, after this, you need not take, but white can go right away for the checkmate, queen to h5. And you have to be very careful after that, because if black plays, for example, g6, then you can be completely lost with queen takes e5 check. But okay, we are not looking at this opening now. Maybe I'll do a video on it at some point. But in this position, f4 was played. Okay, so d5 is probably the strongest among the strongest practical responses, which is what Nashmadinov played. Always, guys, if your opponent attacks in the flank, you should consider responding in the center. So d5 is very, very strong move. And now we have f takes e5 attacking knight. But of course, this doesn't lose material because we have knight takes e4, and then of course the knight is protected by this pawn. And now not capture the knight, but simply knight to f3, developing another piece. Often in this position, instead of knight to f3, a lot of people play queen to e2 or queen to f3. So that's also moves that are possible. Okay, and now our hero Nashmadinov decided that he is going to play bishop to b4, and this is just activity at any cost. This is you know, you are pinning this knight, kind of an indirect pin, and you're activating the bishop. It's not the best move by any means, but this is the way he played during those early years. And now, of course, we have move queen to e2, and the idea is, of course, that if black does nothing, then simply white will capture this knight, and after takes, then white will be a pawn up. But you know, instead of queen e2, it is considered to be pretty strong and much stronger to play simply bishop e2, because you know, these ideas with queen e2 assume that your opponent doesn't have any moves, which of course isn't true. So when in doubt, it's usually best to simply develop pieces, you know, bishop e2, and you know, simply the idea is to castle was much stronger. But okay, queen e2 was played, and now our hero captures the knight. Bishop takes c3. Not the best move, of course, but it does. The idea is to remove the knight and keep the active knight here for a future possible attack. So he removed an active piece from white. And after b2 takes c3, then there is a move bishop to g4. So both bishops have been activated, and bishop g4 actually pins this knight on f3. So now white has a decision to make. A lot of the time, guys, when somebody pins your piece like this, like the knight obviously cannot move because the queen will be captured. a lot of the time it makes sense to pause, pose a question and force your opponent to make a decision. So moves like pawn to h3 should be considered. The problem with a move to with a move like h3 right away is that it weakens this g3 square, so you could have very nasty forks with the knight here. And also a problem with a move like that is that you have to be careful about responses like queen to h4 check. So I know right now it's not possible to play that necessarily because knight can capture, but this knight is not here forever, and weakening the king side is maybe one of the ideas behind a move like a bishop to g4, because if white white has to be careful. Knight is paralyzed, and now you can't necessarily kick the bishop out right away. So what did white do here? Well, Samsonov in this position played queen to b5 check. I think it's a very dubious move, and the reason why it's dubious is, yes, the threat is to win this pawn. But is it going to be okay for white? Does white have the time to enjoy this material advantage when black has such a strong attack? And that is the question. So I would say this is quite a mistake. I mean, if I was playing this game, I might consider moves like pawn to c6, but also moves like knight to d7, knight to c6. Certainly are not necessarily losing moves. You should moves that you should take a look at. Yeah, knight c6 actually is the best move here, I think. But Nashmadinov played pawn to c6 instead, which is not as active as knight to c6, but okay. And now we have queen takes b7. I think this is an extremely risky move because yes, it is attacking, but like I said, wasting all these moves on moving the queen around when you have an attack going on in front of your king is maybe not very smart. So queen takes b7, and now first bishop took the knight on f3, removing an important defender, and didn't recapture here, because after pawn takes you have an immediate check here and you have big problems. So actually the white player decided to go ahead and take the rook. That is not better though, because really white should well, white shouldn't have done this to begin with, because black now has a quite good attack going on. So after capturing the rook, we have bishop takes on g2, because we don't care about saving material. And after that, white really should have simply played bishop takes g2, and the computer gives this as an equal evaluation. But instead of that, white made a critical mistake here. Can you see what white played? White played bishop e2 instead, and this is a nonsense move. I understand that white was afraid, but bishop to e2 is just giving up. I mean, this is a threat certainly, And now black demonstrates why this is such a strong threat in this position. So we have queen to h for check. King to d1 is, I think, forced because, well, yeah, it's a forced move. And now knight to f2 check. King back to e1. And can you see, ladies and gentlemen, the checkmate variation in this position? You can feel free to pause the video for a couple seconds and see if you can find where is the mate here. If you have found it, congratulations, it is simply knight to d3 check. And now king comes back to d1, and now not repeating this knight to f2 check, but spectacular sacrifice, queen e1 check. Now the king cannot capture the queen in this position because the knight is attacking that square. So rook takes e1, and now knight to f2 is a spectacular checkmate, and this kind of checkmate is actually called the SMOTHER checkmate. That is because the king is smothered, cannot move anywhere due to his own pieces, and nevertheless is in check from the knight. It's a very beautiful mate, and is a very beautiful illustration for why instead of running around with your queen grabbing material, you should be concerned with getting your king to safety and castling as soon as possible. And it is a beautiful illustration of that concept. I hope you've enjoyed this game, and we will see many other games by Mr. Neshmedinov, who will show us many other very interesting and much more complex combinations. Until next time, thank you.